We want to box you around. We try to reason with you folks, and you don't take to that. We have no violence here. You're not even allowed to spank a child. But you're taking advantage of this. But what the TDF does, Guyana Defense Force does, is their business. And what the police do is also their business. So we're just going to turn the matter over to the police, and the Guyana Defense Force, Commandeer Price, General Price, Brigadier General Price, Brigadier General Price is his title. He's a very good friend. All we will do is lift up this radio, because if you want to go to the outside and get bitten by snakes, I'll be down in the ISU with somebody else sick right now with something we don't know what the hell's the matter with them. Because there's no diseases in this community, no bugs in this community that'll give you anything. We've never been bitten by a snake, miraculous. There's not a community in California or any place in the United States where there are snakes. Many times there are snakes that we have that can make that record that they've never been bitten by a snake. We can. We've seen miracles last night. We saw such a miracle on Miracles as Mary Griffith. She was dying in rigors, and her tongue had gone back in her throat, and she was in the last quivering motions of death. She was saved last night miraculously. And then before that, miraculously, Terry Carter, when she went into, Terry Carter, scratch that, Terry Smart went into a coma due to septicemia of the blood, impossible to cure, until I came up to her ear and spoke the word, and now she's doing normally. And I don't know how many miracles. The miracle of this young man that drank the gasoline, 3 cups. But 1 teaspoon should be enough for you. 1 teaspoon would have killed you, just the breath of it. If you breathe gasoline long enough, you will die. You don't appreciate the miracles. Some of you don't appreciate the care and the love. And I missed something else. James Basie, who was dying with something there that we couldn't deal with, kidney infection. We couldn't have got him out at that hour of the night. When I walked back immediately, his temperature, all the medical staff, when I touched him, walked by, his temperature dropped down. Now he's normally well today. Now, mark my words, we're tired of 30 people being taken off production because of this. We haven't had that much, and the rest of it, anybody else that runs, it's that you're in the hands of the Guyana Defense Force, and you're in the hands of the police, and we're going to write you, and the parents who will back us up in this are the guardians, and it's going to be too much trouble for you, because you don't know what the hell you've got until you get caught by somebody that doesn't believe in fooling around. They believe in people being disciplined, and when they take over in their jails, they believe in teaching you a lesson. So that's what's going to happen. We're tired of this loss of production. Thank you, and I love you very much. Attention, attention, attention. Anyone that's coming near wherever my abode is, don't get in front of my door or pull on my handle on my window. Don't touch my window on my door. You might find yourself in a lot of trouble. It's meant only for mercenaries or somebody else that wants to come and start some shit with me or the children that I keep down there. You understand what I'm saying? Be sure you come, announce yourself, because you get on that porch and don't announce yourself, trouble, trouble. Thank you.
Attention, attention. Just like to talk about the miracles that Dad has done in the last couple of days. We know about the Basie child that was going in convulsions, and he just walked over and talked to him and told him that everything would be all right. We know about Terry when she had passed out and her electrolytes were all unbalanced, and Dad walked away when the medical staff couldn't do anything, and he walked away, walked down to her, and he looked at her, and on his way down he said it to himself that he couldn't let this be, and he helped her just by his word and his presence there. And the Griffith child that had gone into convulsions last night, and he did the same thing. He helped her out also. Also, when we were out at sea going to Jonestown just about a week ago, the weather broke off. We were drifting out there, but all of a sudden the ocean was calm. There was no tossing. The weather was nice. We hooked up a radio that hadn't worked before. We tried it, and it worked. When we made our communications and we were safe on dry land, we tried the radio again, and it didn't work. I said all this to point out that things just don't happen, they happen just. And we really have to remember who and what Dad stands for. And I also would like to point out the 2 seniors that Dad prophesied about. And before I talk about the 2 seniors, I'd like to point out about Terry Smart that had septicemia. Mary Black, who's a lab technician, who's seen a lot of cases, was so astounded that she had to go around and look at Terry's face, because you don't come out of a situation that Dad brought Terry out of. And she was definitely in the jaws of death, and Dad snatched her out. And she was in a coma, unconscious. The medical staff, as I pointed out before, they couldn't revive her, they couldn't do anything for her. She didn't respond to any of the treatment that the medical staff was trying to give to her. They scratched her, they put light in her eyes, they rubbed her eyeballs with cotton, they pricked her with pins, and no response. Only till Dad walked in the room and put his hand on her and started to talk to her did she respond.
But there are dangers. Marietta Langston just fell head first out of a loft. Attention, attention, attention. You'll have to watch your footing. You'll have to watch getting in and out of lofts. No children are to be in lofts. The lofts that are like marionettas, where they tilt to one end, they should go straight up to the middle, so no one can fall head first through them. Marietta Langston fell head first. If I hadn't had a feeling of revelation about it, as I was going along that she'd be okay, I suppose it had been my undoing. Fortunately, no harm came. Fortunately. But I'm warning you, we had a child that had a coma for several days, as you know. Went into coma for several days, and we had one that went in for hours. That's been healed, like Julius Evans, the Evans child. So we've got to be extremely careful. Everything with equipment, industrial, and so forth. Also, it's a full moon in the 16th. Most people, we're 98% water, so we rise like the tide. Most people it affects positively, and some it affects negatively. So we have to be more aware for dangers to our life, our crippling disorders, our diseases, around the 16th and the full moon. Please remember that fact and regard it for your own safety. Attention, attention, attention. I demand it's going to be a matter of observation by the people, the observers, and even the citizens of Jonestown if people do not smile and give encouragement to people as they pass by friendly greeting and a pat on the shoulder occasionally, a warmth. We need to quit clicking and share love with all people. I demand it. Now you'll hear it next from the floor so you don't change your patterns in this way. All of us who owe at least friendliness to each other. There's a great miracle just wrought today. 2 of them. Marietta Langston, the last of which fell from the attic head first. She should not be alive. She should be a vegetable. She should have broken her neck. No way can you come out of that. People are not appreciative enough. There are so many things going for them. But whether you're appreciative or not, I want to see you speaking, because if you come up for not speaking or not showing a friendly smile, you will be given a warning. And you know 2 warnings means public services. So please, all of us start showing some kindness and love to the children. I've said this before. To give them that kind of love, hug them every now and then, and show warmth as you pass them. It'll help them like flowers grow. Even plants respond to love. Secondly, I would like to remind the women that go in to different ports of duty, such as Georgetown or upriver. Karen has had several come on to her. Karen's a good-looking woman indeed. Karen Layton. But she knew their games, and all the other women have told me the same thing. She'd say, if you're looking for somebody to get you to the States, I can't do it. And then the men right there on the spot would say, do you have a friend that could? Do you have a girlfriend that might help me? So that's what they're interested in you, and you're going to have, that's why they're interested in you. You're going to have the good sense and judgment to understand that and not be an ass. and think that they're interested in you because of your beauty, or they're going to give you money. It's all a bunch of bullshit. They want to merely marry you, which will give them an opportunity to become a U.S. citizen. That's the only reason any Guyanese would have interest in you, because we've had too many reports. Too many reports. Evelyn, Karen, all particularly of the workers in Jonestown, not one that hasn't told me something about this kind of experience. So I want you to take that in mind, keep it in mind, that no matter how beautiful you think you are, that's all the Guyanese males out there want from you, because socialism hasn't got down to the grassroots yet. The leaders in government are strongly socialists, many of them very, very committed, but socialism has not got down to the people yet. They think America is the Mecca. America is the greatest hope of the world. They don't know about its racism. They refuse to face it. Even some of them are guilty of reverse racism. One person, rather high in the party, for instance, said to our people just yesterday, you know, American blacks are lazy. Blacks here are lazy. Said, well, aren't you black? Yes, but I'm mixed with white. So this idiocy goes on until they become socialists. This woman did have theoretical socialism, but she still wasn't a practical socialist. And it's very damn important that you don't get carried away by your good looks, because some of the best-looking women here have been approached, offered everything that they were in love, and they wanted them, going to give them this and that. When they said frankly no, like Karen and Evelyn and several others, her sister, all kinds of reports I've had, they immediately say, oh, well, they get mad, like Evelyn did with the businessman, or they say they get mad as hell, or they'll say, they're bold, like they would be Karen, do you have a friend that could help me? They're very narcissistic. Socialism, they love themselves very much. Socialism has not gotten down to the people yet. So remember that fact. Thank you very much, and much love. Attention, 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 attention. Those who are interested, and the community seems to be at large, in going to the Soviet Union, never call it Russia, the Soviet Union, and never speak of the Warsaw Pact, call it the Warsaw Treaty. That's the alliance of all of the great socialist nations with the Soviet Union. Don't worry about language. We will be a community intact. So some of you will feel that you can never learn the language of the Soviet Union. Don't be fearful, because we will be allowed to speak English, they said. It wasn't a big issue. Some didn't ever learn it perfectly, but we want to try. We want to try. Students, another matter. You won't have difficulty, because every student now in the Soviet Union speaks English as their second language. It's just a matter of course. They teach English even to the little children in the nursery schools. They're very advanced in that regard. To those of you that have fears that the Soviet Union, you won't have more freedom, you won't have as much freedom, you have indeed a great deal more. Even so much, if you did not like it, you could go back and live in fascist USA. They would reject. They'll let you do that if you choose. But I wanted to stress some of those things that might be of some concern. Also, there may be even some scholarships by the first of the next year offered to us, because the Guyanese do not take Soviet scholarships, and some who want them even, the ambassador told us, they will now be offered to us. It may be mid next year, so if you have university ambitions, there are more opportunities for university. Well, it does take a few months, at least to get scrutinized. It is not a matter overnight. And to those that want to stay in the project, if you're having difficulties, you can write that up. Well, we can maintain both, because we're not going to leave on an unfriendly basis. We're going to be producing if we ever did. We will be producing right up. That was most important, the ambassador said, to leave in a friendly tune and a friendly tone. And so it's very conceivable, if someone was reluctant to go, they could have this place as their home forever, if that's the way they thought about it. Didn't want to go with the office. I would think that would be too hardy if you wanted to leave the office at any time. When you think about the number of accidents that happen to any community, and you think of the fact that we had a woman fall on her head today, one child had a heavy fall, no harm at all. We had someone take gasoline, and you're supposed to die when the fumes even come to your nose. We had another that was struck with a terrible kidney attack, and another reaction to B, and another that had a septicemia, rare bacterial disease that's been forming in her blood for years. Very smart, and we see them here, one right after another, and walked by one young man in the SC unit who had not been able to urinate for 25 hours, and he urinated. That's your privilege, so if you don't want to be around someone who has that kind of power or principle. At that point, as I said, you are free. You can stay here. When we get there, all we have to do, we want to be sure no one messes up. If we get there, all we have to do is go to the U.S. consulate and ask to go back. We'll have that arrangement. You can ask to go back. There's no problem about that. If you really want to live in Babylon and face a nuclear hell, or concentration camps, and a nuclear hell where there'll be no shelters like there are in the USSR, great cities underground, that'll be your privilege and your prerogative. But it looks very, very positive, and we will let you know the moment on the musicians or the basketball team. Both need to be functioning. It could be there'll be invitations for both. Certainly next year there will be. There would be no question about it now, but Guyana's quota, which they didn't take, may have already been given to some other people for this year. But there will certainly be no doubt about it, no question that you'll be having quotas in scholarships and quotas in cultural exchange, quotas for entertainment. And then, as I said, this one author alone, $60,000 US, a minimum of $60,000 US would go towards it, plus foods and the best of care while you were there for 2 or 3 weeks. Just wanted to pass that on for something to think about, and so people can really understand the beautiful future you have as young people and as seniors, because it's the greatest medical centers in the world, the best of medical care, and even promised attention. Some people feel insecure because of my health, and that affects your ideas about my future and your future. I want to tell you, those who worry the most about my health, I will long outlive you. As you see me running around this place, it's quite obvious that I have gone through the valley of the shadow and returned. I've been through the valley of the shadow of death so many times in nearly a half-century that you wouldn't even dream. Naturally, when I hear people, I get arthritis. It goes immediately into my hands and my joints. That's a part of it. Then it'll pass away. My hands may appear swollen, then it will pass away. You have nothing to worry about my health, not one single thing. Because I did not bring you to this point to leave you without a future, without someone who loves you and will plan and care for you. Thank you and much love.
Protested strongly the forced expulsion in Moscow yesterday of an Austrian radio and television correspondent. The Austrian Foreign Ministry today informed the Soviet Embassy in Vienna that the action constitutes a violation of the Helsinki Agreement in their mind and could damage friendly relations. The reporter was forced to leave Moscow yesterday after Soviet officials canceled his visa because he was working with the CIA. The Soviet Union were much more generous than many of us would have been when they allowed Austria, once they conquered the Nazis that controlled Austria, and Austria's always been very Germanic in its tendencies, it was very pro-Hitler. Austria had been conquered by the Soviets. I mean, the Nazis had been defeated in Austria, and they allowed it to become independent, thus showing a great deal of tolerance on the part of the Soviet Union to avoid nuclear war, because it was just about to that point. Now Austria is moving more and more to the right, as West Germany is also. There's Hitlerite movements worshipping Adolf Hitler as much as they did back in the 30s, in spite of the millions that he killed in gas chambers. People of color, minorities, socialist and communist, and Semites. It's a terrible, terrible thing that people learn so little from history. Heavy fog over the Irish Sea is hampering efforts to clean up a 16-kilometer, is equal to over 9 miles of oil slick threatening the English coast, the Welsh coast. Tons of oil began spilling into the sea late last night after a Greek tanker ran aground on rock. Today, we shall discuss the ruling class kicking Nixon around again. Richard M. Nixon has started to crawl back in the news again, and none too soon. A number of liberal-minded souls have professed to sentiments of moral outrage that the ex-president should emerge from his self-imposed isolation after resigning the presidency in disgrace in the summer of 1974. They are furious that David Frost should have paid Richard the jackal-hearted $1 million and provide him major access to the nation's heart and minds in a series of highly publicized interviews. A covey of booksellers and other righteous guardians of the public morality think it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace that the unindicted co-conspirator of Watergate, should be permitted to have his memoirs published and sold at the price of $19.95 for each book, in the otherwise moral business climate of the USA. The last grouping promoted a campaign from the dubious slogan, "Don't buy books from crooks." A more self-defeating proposition cannot be imagined. Were this campaign to succeed, the country's multi-billion-dollar publishing industry would have to give up the ghost on the spot, as all of the books that American public are really allowed to read, that are promoted by the media, are books written by crooks. Following hard on the heels of his excursion into the uncertain regions of the Book of the Month Club, Nixon began making carefully selected public appearances, going to church, attending local political gatherings, low-key testimonial dinners, the theater, and the like. Guardedly sympathetic articles about the musings of the hermit of San Clemente, California, Mr. Nixon, have begun to appear in newspapers and journals not otherwise known for their circumspection. During the summer, the former chief executive ventured further from home into the friendly hills of traditionally Republican eastern Kentucky. There he was lustily cheered by thousands of corps of die-hard loyalists of the kind who have gone to their graves protesting the calumnies heaped on the head of Jack the Ripper. Taking heart from this outburst of provincial approbation, Nixon went on to dare the perils of New York City, where particularly he was greeted with comparable enthusiasm. There were some that gawked in the streets at Manhattan and booed in a college auditorium. No matter, having long ago written off New York as a melange of ungrateful, un-American activities, un-American minorities rather, and a hotbed of subversion, the once mighty Milhouse Nixon was not at all dismayed by his reception in the Big Apple. In fact, he probably relished it. For one thing, it confirmed indeed his most deeply held prejudices. Beyond that, the ex-president, who almost became a dictator, purpose was clearly not to show that he was popular in New York. He always had a stubborn streak of realism, but rather to demonstrate that he could enter into the lion's den and still retire unharmed. It is, to be sure, tempting to join in the swelling chorus of denunciation that has greeted Nixon rallies and sallies into the public limelight. It's one thing, however, to register disapproval of the man and all that he has stood for, but it's quite another if such a campaign might discourage the ex-president to the point where he would once again retreat into undeserved obscurity. That would truly be a pity. We should want old Nixon to kick around again, not only out of any sense of picayune with his personal character, but as a useful means for focusing public attention again and again on the political character of the bourgeoisie state in its last stages before it becomes de jure fascism. It is now de facto fascism. In fact, that is, it is fascist, though the armies are not in the streets. The system is a de facto fascist state. First of all, the suggestion that Nixon isn't fit to be seen in public, or even to hold illusions about the possibility of once again holding political office, makes the rest of our public officials look a lot better than any of them deserve. We should be arguing that Mr. Nixon had just as much right to hold public office as the rest of monopoly capitalism's unindicted co-conspirators, all which are crooks in Congress. Over half of them holding gold that's been taken from the blood of South Africans. Union of South Africa, they hold gold stocks where blacks are cruelly tortured to death, working for just a minimum of 21 cents an hour in the Union of South Africa to get that gold that half the Congress owns stock in. Is there a crime, after all, he has committed which has not been committed by almost every one of his predecessors in the White House, and by any member of the state political apparatus who has managed to survive the political wars? As one of our arch conservative thinkers, Victor Lasky, has pointed out, it didn't begin with Richard Nixon. At most, the one-time chief executive was guilty of ineptitude. It's hardly a hanging offense. Would that more of our officials were equally clumsy. Nor should we discourage people from reading the Nixon memoirs, although it would undoubtedly be wiser and more economical to salvage them from the remainder bins in due course than to part with the $20 still being asked. But the wit and wisdom of Richard Nixon are worth keeping alive and even publicizing. Most of it is self-serving blather, of course, and it comes in that unique tricky-dick style of unctuous prose in which Nixon has always been devoted under the illusion that it comes off as frank and sincere when the real impression it gives is that he is selling snake oil, and that at an inflated price. The ex-president's view of Watergate is the most fascinating section of these memoirs. For one thing, he makes it perfectly clear that he was definitely not the sixth man in the Watergate break-in. He takes great pains to tell us that he was in Florida at the time, down to the detail that his first report on the incident came from a news item in the Miami Herald. And as to the charge that somewhere along the line he pulled a smoking gun on John Dean is a bit of peculiarity. Well, more to the point is what he did do. What with 3 Cubans and Howard Hunt under arrest, Nixon was certainly pleased to hear Charles Colson's explanation of the break-in a few days after the event. According to Colson, says Nixon, it was all a Cuban immigration plot because of the right-wing Cubans who were afraid that if George McGovern were elected president, he would normalize relations with socialist Cuba. Colson went on to explain Nixon's claim that it was logical for Hunt to be involved since one of Hunt's jobs in the CIA was to train Cuban exiles for the ill-fated Bay of Pigs invasion. Although why anyone would be willing to trust their political future to Hunt after the fiasco seemingly has not occurred to anyone. It's also very strange that Hunt was seen at the site of the assassination of President Kennedy. What was Nixon's reaction to all this? I told Colson we were just going to leave the Watergate matter where it was, with the Cubans, and this from the fearless investigator, Alger Hiss. There's much more along this line, some of it so deliciously revealing of the chain of lies, deals, bribes, and general corruption that flourishes in the heart of fascist USA state apparatus, that one can only admire the sagacity of those who contrived Nixon's political demise so as to shut the man up. It is understandable why the political establishment generally is viewing the Nixon revival with such distaste. So far as they are concerned, they let the ex-president off easy, did they ever? But instead of expressing his appreciation for such magnanimity and letting the conspirator to destroy a nation go free, Nixon is trying to make a nuisance of himself all over again. The power brokers know that none of this can do themselves or the class they serve any good, so the Trilateral Commission is doing all it can to try to resist him. It can only serve to remind people of all these nagging, unanswered questions they were beginning to have, and not just about the missing 18 and a half minutes of tape, although Nixon still claims to be mystified about that one, as ever, though it was admitted one occasion that he had destroyed it. On a more serious level, people were beginning to suspect that the democratic face of this republic was nothing but a mask, an elaborate disguise designed to obscure the real nature of the political power under the last stages of monopoly capitalism and the Trilateral Commission. That, after all, is the essential cover-up in the whole process. Clearly, monopoly capital, finance capitalism, would like to keep Richard Nixon bottled up, leaving us with an image of him as the one president who did wrong, and sort of the exception who proves the rule that in general we are governed by the wisest and fairest, or at least a reasonable facsimile thereof, and separate him from the criminality of all the other presidents, like the lies about the Bay of Pigs told by Johnson. Every president has heaped us with lies. Every president of the United States has been a tool of the imperialist ruling class of the Trilateral Commission. Keep Nixon under wraps? Hell no. We should be demanding that the genie be let out of the bottle so people can really see how wicked the system of USA imperialism is. Much love, much work, I hope. Show to us that you can work in 8 hours what you did in 10 that's not yet been shown, and then we're going to be able to cut back. Let's make our goals so we can get our people out of the state of horror that they're in.